Hi there, this is Grumpy Opinions. Let's get on with the show. Pluribus is the new Apple TV show about a sci-fi alternate present where an alien space code turned almost everybody in the world into a psychically connected, single hive mind entity, all except for trashy romantasy novelist Carol Struka and a handful of other people. The first 2 episodes dropped last week and you can find my review of them here. Meanwhile, let's get on with a recap of the latest episode. Episode 3, Sprouts, kicks off with a flashback to a time when Carol and Helen took a vacation to Norway, and they stayed in a nice hotel, something that Carol seems to think is a terrible idea, while Helen clearly just enjoys the romance of all of it. Back in the present, Carol's flying home, or more correctly, a pair of real pilots are flying her, and Carol's kind of sulkily just hanging out the back of the airplane, occasionally asking Zosia questions, and then manages to get another survivor on the phone, but he's all like Spanish and rude, and so she ends up giving up. Back in Albuquerque, she goes home, watches some Golden Girls, and then the Thems deliver her a tasty breakfast, and she of course throws it in the bin and decides to go to the shops. Only turns out the shops are all empty, and when she complains, the Thems happily just come and restock the place so that she can do a big shop whenever she wants. And then back home, she watches more Golden Girls, and then the power goes out, and when she complains, she makes an offhand remark about wanting a hand grenade. So Zosia turns up with a hand grenade. And Carol decides, you know what, I want to talk to somebody and get drunk, so she decides to actually chat to Zosia about some stuff. And it's only just now, when the conversation's starting to get somewhere, that Carol decides to start larking around with a hand grenade, assuming that it's a toy. And when she pulls out the pin, Zosia grabs it and tosses it out the window, where it manages to kaboom the truck, and leaves the pair of them both a bit shell-shocked, and Zosia more than a little bit worse for wear. Luckily, the Thems send an immediate ambulance, and while in hospital, they explain to Carol that, yeah, they'll happily give her another hand grenade, or even a nuke, if that will make her happy. And Carol's like, interesting. End of episode. So what did I think? Well, again, this was another decently directed, well-acted, well-shot episode. And it had some interesting ideas this week, or at least it tried a little to expand on them and Carol's understanding of events and what's going on. And hey, it was interesting that we got to see that the Thems are doing things like cutting power at night. I mean, they're consolidating their food supplies as well. I mean, we already know that they recycle, and that they generally want to just have people helping out in all jobs, as we saw previously. So it's clear that the old world order just simply doesn't exist anymore, something that Carol seems to be really struggling to come to grips with. And it makes sense, because, if humanity are all one mind, then, there's no need for greed, there's no jealousy, there's no reason not to share all the resources in the world 100% equally, there's no reason to waste power or food. And I assume this is also stuff that they plan to expand on later in the series, since thus far Carol has needed everything explained to her like she's an idiot or she doesn't get it. And it's also interesting that they've clearly demonstrated that they have this need for everyone, Carol especially, to be happy. And that means they're going to put aside any safety concerns, even to the point of giving her, dangerous weapons. And it's good that we actually got a clearer look at Carol, pre-apocalypse. Because previously we only ever saw her, doing her book tour, and sort of her fixed grin smiling for her fans' face. And the rest of the time she was just tired and slightly drunk because she was on a book tour. But this episode, we get to see a much more normal day. In fact, hell, it's literally getting to see her on a romantic holiday with her partner. And we see that Carol, even in the midst of all this gorgeous, cool ice palace thing, is chronically depressed and a complete downer no matter what's happening. But also that Helen was clearly a bit of a saint for putting up with all her bullshit. And this is unfortunately also where some trouble starts to arise. Okay, so if Carol is normally just a grim sourpuss all the time, then what's actually changed? I mean, in some ways this slightly lessens the impact of her grieving her partner and also the loss of the world as she knows it, if it turns out that she's basically been a Mardy cow with a face like a well-scalped arse all the time. And it further underlines to me how little we know about Carol as a character. As a person, what do we know about her life other than she's a writer, her partner was Helen, and she's vaguely successful and is a bit grumpy? I mean, do we know anything about whether she got on with her neighbours? Did she have any family we know about? Friends? I mean, clearly nobody else that she cares about other than Helen. In fact, she literally seems to care about absolutely nothing other than being obnoxious and watching the Golden Girls now. Oh, on a side note, I actually laughed at most of the clips from the Golden Girls because it's actually funny. Whereas none of the gags in this show have actually made me laugh. There are moments where they're trying to do funny things, but they're not laugh out loud funny things. They're all kind of predictable or dragged out. But my real issue with Carol's character being vague is we're 3 episodes, and that's 3 hours into the show, and 2.5 of those hours have been focused almost entirely around Carol, where she's the main character on screen, she's the only real actor, and she is our focus point. And yet, because we know so little about her as a character, and as a person other than recently bereaved author who's perpetually irritated and was apparently never happy, it adds to the sense that this show is dragging its heels. Take the titular Sprouts sequence of the episode, Sprouts being the supermarket. Now, this could have actually been 2 minutes. Instead, it's like 10 minutes of a montage to tell us that the supermarket is empty, that they filled it up as soon as she asked. Yeah, it's the same problem I had in episode 2 with dragged out plot and overlong montages, and episodes that could have been 25 minutes long end up being an hour, and nothing that's added is really that much of narrative value. I'm not saying that, it's bad, but again, it's kind of pointless. And another problem is that Carol is deliberately not engaging with the thems at this point, and thus basic info is being denied to the audience. And it feels that obviously they're paying out a little bit here and there, but in a way that always feels kind of clunky and forced. Like my point last time about the overly constructed conversations with the other normals feeling a bit strange and forced. This week we've got 2 scenes where it feels like we're learning stuff, and in one of them it jumps off to becoming a phone call, after which Carol just goes back to being grumpy again. And in the second one, just as the point where we feel like we're about to learn important information, Carol starts mucking about with a hand grenade. Now, yeah, sure, she's drunk at this point, but it's exactly the point in the conversation where it's starting to go down avenues of interesting information for the audience. And then, kaboom, conversation over, and end of the episode, pretty much. Also, just on a side note, despite throwing the grenade outside the house and them both lying down on the ground, somehow Zosia got hit by shrapnel, which, I don't know, maybe it's possible, but the way they shot it makes it seem unlikely, because you would think the grenade was on the ground, and then they're also on the ground, and there's a wall between them. And I know that American houses are maybe not quite made of the same stuff as houses in Scotland, being as we build everything out of stone, so yeah, maybe it just went straight through the wall or something, but it seems odd, seemed unlikely. But I'm willing to admit, that could just be my mistake. Also, just as a random thing, it's a bit weird that when the thems give Carol back all of her mail, for a hugely successful author, even in the age of emails and online social media, you think she'd have a few more letters than that. Just saying. So where does that leave us? Well, it kind of leaves us in the same place we were at the end of the last 2 episodes, where it's largely the same pros and same cons. It's a show that's got a good premise and is competently made, but again, I'm finding it frustratingly written and really, really, really badly paced and slow. Again, there's no real reason for me to stop watching it since, well, nothing has really happened yet story-wise, and that does worry me a little bit, because this is a 9-episode season, apparently, and we're 3 episodes in, so we're a third of the way in, so technically we should be through Act 1, if you do it that way. But I feel like we've only barely scratched the surface of the story. And I've seen online some people saying that folks who don't enjoy this way of telling their story are just ruined by the TikTok generation or something, which makes me laugh because I haven't got a clue about how TikTok works and I'm way too old for that. There's a country mile between the way that Gilligan did similar things in Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul with long-running bits. Sure, yeah, there was a 1 episode about the fly and everything. Yeah, sure. That's 1 episode out of all of Breaking Bad. And there were bits where they did montages and stuff. But Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul had multiple characters with loads of subplots and lots of setup and lots of witty dialogue between different characters. This show, fundamentally, for 90% of it, is just 2 people talking, because basically everybody other than the other humans and Carol is the same character. And as I said, a third of the way through the story, you expect that we would have reached some kind of major moving on point, but really, we're still kind of just in the opening of the show. Nothing happened this week that actually really affects anything, unless Zosia's injury is actually going to become some kind of ongoing thing, like if she ends up like in, wheelchair or something, and Carol has to deal with the fact that she did that as a reminder of her damaging things in a much more obvious way than just the vague idea of 11 million deaths. But seeing as Carol, other than drinking, hasn't really been bothered by anything she's done that we can tell, and it's had no notable effect on her personality that we've seen since even before everything went wrong, well, then I doubt she's going to react that much to Zosia taking a hand grenade, apart from like a little bit of guilt maybe in the next episode when they say hi. So yeah, I'm still kind of waiting for this show to get round to telling the story it wants to tell. And I refuse to fanboy my way into claiming that I'm enjoying it just because I like Gilligan's other shows. I mean, yeah, I think he's a good writer. I think he's a good showrunner. But I think he's kind of tripping himself up here. And I'll see how things stand next week when hopefully something new happens in the story, and possibly this guy that Carla was on the phone to will become part of the story, because I presume that's where this is going. But still, what is the point of this show? What is it building up to? What is it about? We really don't know at this point. And I have a worrying feeling that we might still not know until maybe 5 minutes before the end of the last episode of the season, and when it'll pull like a snowpiercer and suddenly go, haha, we're going off in a different direction now. And I kind of hope that's not the case, but otherwise, they better get something going, because there's no plot yet, and people are going to get pretty damn bored of watching Carol be grumpy and nobody telling anyone anything fairly soon. But for now, that's all my thoughts, so till next time, these have been my grumpy opinions.